Champions Mojo is part of the CG Sports Network.
Welcome to the award-winning Champions Mojo, hosted by two world record-holding athletes and health, life, and leadership coaches. Be inspired as you listen to Conversations with Champions. And now, your hosts, Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker.
Hello, friends. Welcome to the Champions Mojo podcast. And as usual, I am co-hosting with Maria Parker. Hey, Maria.
Hi, Kelly. Good to be here today.
Yes, it's a big one for us. Somebody we've been trying to get on the show for, I think, about a year. And we're going to give him a little bit more of an introduction in a minute. But first, we got to say hi to Aaron, who's sitting there. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, everybody.
So
good to be here.
Yeah, we are thrilled. Yes. So we have as our guest today, Aaron Peirsol. He's an Olympic legend in so many people's minds, a 3-time Olympian, 7-time Olympic medalist. 5 of those medals are gold. What else do you have for us about Aaron, Maria?
Well, even though Aaron's been retired from swimming for a decade, he is impressively still the current world record holder in the long course 200-meter backstroke. And since getting away from the pool, he's been involved in many different activities, including helping charities that fight for the preservations of our oceans. But let's hear from the man himself. Aaron, welcome to Champions Mojo.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. So I was going to say this, before we started recording, and Aaron, I as a swimmer, and Maria's, I don't know if you know, she's a world-class world record holder herself in cycling.
I don't care about swimming, but even I know about you.
Yeah. She even knows about you. But as a swimmer myself and a 200-meter backstroker, sometimes I am just fangirling. I mean, it's just amazing. You have not lost any of your luster for me. And it's just really, really exciting to have you with us today. So normally, did you know that it's bad podcast etiquette to ask your guests, what have you been up to lately? That is not, like they say, that is a question that a lot of listeners are bored with. But Maria and I decided before you got on that we really feel like listeners will want to know the answer to that question. So where are you? What are you doing? Give us a Aaron Peirsol update.
Yeah, this is not my living room. I don't have a huge mirror in my living room. But now I am in Waikiki this weekend. Tanae, my girlfriend, is working on a shoot, and so we're having a weekend in town, so to speak. And we live up on the northern end of the island of Oahu. So this is kind of for a couple of days, a bit of where we're at, and been lovely. So we woke up this morning. We're a bit behind you guys with time, and it's beautiful out, as you guys can imagine. But the hustle bustle of Honolulu and Waikiki is kind of down below, and that's kind of fun. And yeah, we've been on the road actually for the last 2.5 weeks. I've slept in my bed, I think, 0 times in the last 2 weeks.
And your bed is, you said, in the North Shore.
It's on the North Shore, but we've been all over the place. We just did a little tour of, I went to Austin, visited some friends, went to Florida for my grandmother's funeral. It was an adventure and a beautiful thing. And we ended up in California and came back. So good to be back and had this all squared away, and wanted a huge mirror behind me for the podcast. Down the right
you seem embarrassed by that. Why does that embarrass you?
I'm not embarrassed. No, not at all. It is what it is.
Well, you're known for your sort of humility and stuff. So maybe you don't want people to have the idea that you like to look at yourself in a mirror.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can't you tell? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think, I think
you look
Aaron,
beautifully rumpled. Beautifully.
Yes. Just as we would expect.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the laid back attitude. And that's kind of one of the things that we wanted to talk with you about is that you have been known for having a laid back attitude. Just like that was one of my favorite things about watching you swim in 3 Olympics was, here's a guy that's coming out onto the world stage and just, I think you were famous for not even putting on your cap and goggles until the last minute. So, hey, if your goggle strap breaks or your cap busts open. So tell us a little bit about laid back Aaron, and how that served you or didn't serve you in both your swimming and later in life.
Sure. Sure, Kelly. And let me preface too, just saying, I think it's great you guys are highlighting so much of the world of sport and the way that you guys are, and highlighting the things that you ladies are. And so pleasure to be on the show. I know I've said that already, but at least acknowledging your contributions to that.
That is so nice.
Yeah, you're the only one to ever do that.
I think you're the first person who's ever done that.
Yeah.
Sure. And I know you guys have been trying to get me on the podcast for quite some time. And I've just been completely on the move. And so locking me down has been difficult. And so I appreciate your patience. But with regards to, well, sure, I've always found that interesting if there was a perception of me being somewhat laid back, and I understand where that came from. I think I was able to internalize my attention fairly well. And
do you mean hide?
I mean compartmentalize, or even kind of be able to put it in a certain place where it wasn't necessarily like dictating my actions, maybe, or overwhelming anything I was doing. So but yeah, I always found that interesting sometimes, particularly during the times when I was slightly tense or anxious or nervous for a race. People were like, "You look so calm," and I'm like, "You don't even know what you're looking at." But I get it, and I kind of was able to navigate that. And so much of what competing is about is what one thing that I feel like, at least within my career and watching others do this, is one of the hardest things is just being able to get out of your own head and get out of your own way. Everyone's very physically capable at a certain point. So the ability just to kind of let that stuff digest and process through, everyone's going to feel those things. So, and there's a lot that's out of our control, and being able to understand that most of it is, and accept that in those situations. And easier said than done in intense situations. But I would have rather been known for being a bit more laid back than being certainly a bit more uptight. And so I take that as a nice, I'm glad I at least exhibited something of that nature.
How has that served you in your life since, that ability to say, you know what, not everything's in my control, and I'm not going to worry about those things that aren't?
Well, I mean, it's, again, like, it's easier said than done, right? And I think when you're comfortable with how prepared you are, you can take those, you can absorb certain things that are coming that are just simply out of your control. And preparation is a big part of that, especially when you're doing something like preparing for some one big particular specific event that only lasts for a minute or two. And but with regards to the rest of life, I think and sometimes it's just a sensibility. I don't know if, I think some people do have more of a propensity for that in general, maybe something developed to some degree, but I've just always noticed for myself personally, when things get tense, I'm able to kind of sit back and be more of an observer, as opposed to feeling like I need to engage, which is nice. And so it's something that I've tried to relay and kind of pass down to, the sport through various ways myself, is just in certain ways to approach tense situations or competition or anything like that, is to not forget to sit back and actually watch and observe what's going on, and kind of navigate it more from an observer standpoint, as opposed to just to kind of throw yourself in and hope for the best kind of thing, if that makes any sense. Goggles are going to break, caps will rip, suits will fall off, and that's part of it's sport. Again, if we get into it and to break it down, for me, in the simplest way, is it's to kind of throw yourself into situations where things will go wrong, and then you get to the worst that can happen is maybe you don't win. It's a really inconsequential way to to learn and to fail and to mess up and to grow. And so you're kind of growing your character in those moments, hopefully. And I think it's important. I've tried to maintain that maybe the most important thing we're growing through something like sport, which has been around for us, like part of our educational curriculum in the West for thousands of years, is to grow our character in tense situations and amongst people, amongst each other, and working together in tense situations and trying not to lose your heads. And and when you break it down, really, that's kind of, for me, what it is. It's, and then it's a great metaphor for life. Love it, where things are a bit more consequential.
So, Aaron, you sound rather reflective, and I wonder if you have reflected how deeply on just what an icon you are in swimming. Like, in the swimming world, you're legend, and what you accomplished, the fact that you even still hold a world record, a decade later, is truly, it's actually 12 years later, 11 years later, is pretty astonishing. I mean, it's probably one of the oldest world records on the books. And I feel like maybe you're so humble, you don't even know what you mean. And not just we've had a lot of Olympians, we've had a lot of Olympic gold medalists, we've had a lot of Olympic coaches, but you're part of that, the legacy of men's backstroke that in the US, where I don't think we've lost a US backstroke gold medal in, I don't know how many Olympics, but it's many, many, many. So you're kind of like almost like a founding pillar of men's backstroke dominance for the US. And so I think that's part of the reason why people, any backstroker we talk to, Aaron Peirsol's like you're the Michael Phelps of backstroke. So what are your thoughts on what your legacy means to the sport and you and just, I don't even know if I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Okay, sure, Kelly. I think, I think I do try. I certainly don't exist my day-to-day life, thinking about my legendary status within the world of swimming, so to speak. And I think I do understand the gravity of what my accolades have, where what they are, and I have a full grasp on that, and I'm very proud of those. And I think what it is there are things that I treasure within that world that are integral to the way that I view what it was that was so important to my career. And it's also just, it's more of the community and the culture of what it was. And there's a vast history of what it is for me to be a part of. And so I'm very proud of this, I don't know if you want to call it a lineage, but it's just, the sport itself, within, say, the Olympic movement goes back well over 100 years. And I don't necessarily look back to the last 25 years of what our legacy is. I look back further than that myself. And I'm very, very proud to be kind of associated with this other wider view of what this community of sport and within the water is. And so for me, I'm very proud of my legacy within the sport, within the modern version of what it is. And my sensibility even kind of goes broader and bigger to a broader sense of what I consider the sport of swimming and water sports to be too. And so it's bigger. For me, it expands into a lifestyle kind of thing. And, there were people that I looked up to when I was younger that a lot of people within the world of swimming don't know. And a lot of them were very good in the ocean. And to me, what it was, and then there were very many people who kind of sparked the sport and the culture of swimming who existed a long time ago, who that was kind of their genesis and where they came from. And to me, the world of swimming is very grand and big. It can be taken out of the Clorox bottle of the pool, so to speak. And so I'm very proud of my accolades, and I try to. I think what it is for me is I try to especially when I speak to kids and adults too, but kids mostly, is to kind of give the children as much of a broader scope of what the sport in general, or doing something, spending so much time in the water as we do, giving that the greatest kind of justice that I can, I guess. Yeah, I know. I grew up, I was watching, I was a big reader of the record books, and I knew that when someone held a record for 10 years, that, was impressive to me. And so it is, but I don't, I'm really careful not to let that get to me too much, but I'm very proud of what I've done. I don't talk about it very much, but it's a very personal thing. And so it's very nice to keep it personal and sacred, I actually think, to some degree. And so that's part of what it is it's, to me, it's not really about the record. It's great. It's fine. Very proud of that. But it's not really about the medals, and those are great. They're wonderful things. But I think one of the things I'm probably more proud about than anything is just the fact that I maintained a certain perspective through my career, and I still kind of live by that to some degree as best I can. And so that to me is very nice, and I like going back to the sport and sharing that.
I love the word sacred and it's one of the stronger words you've used in terms of water and swimming and, all the sort of globalization that you've, put with, around, so you've got your record and what do you call the Clorox? But you're trying, it sounds like you're expanding. You have a water thing. I mean, you love water. We read that your dad was a captain, like a boat captain.
My dad's a sailor. Yes.
Sailor. Okay.
And we actually just put my grandmother in the ground about a week and a half ago, and she was a mermaid.
Yeah.
Literally. She was this kind of fun to actually even talk about her for just a second, but
sure.
She was a Wiki-Watchie in Florida back in I want to say it was like what would it have been, 40s or 50s, I guess. And Wiki-Watchies it was a pretty risque thing at the time, but it was basically a synchronized swimmer, kind of a risque version of like
a rocket in the water.
And she was, but also like very capable in the water. And she'd be the first one every day to just be like, wake up, and she'd be like, I want to go to the beach. Let's go to the beach. And she instilled that into my dad, and my dad's lived a very interesting kind of spiritual life on the water. And my mother has swum every day herself since she was in her early 20s. It's a really interesting thing. It runs very deep in the family. So the pool was like kind of this neat, interesting, narrow way to express that. And it took us all over the world,
Yeah. So do you think this is something that everybody needs, this connection to the water and the ocean and swimming, or is it just something that runs in your family?
Good question. I think the sport, I think one of the biggest things that sport in general can use is an idea of this kind of ability to apply or to be somewhat functional or practical with it. Like I'm a good swimmer, so I can put myself on a paddleboard and cross a channel. And if my paddleboard sinks or flies away or whatever, it's okay. I can swim to shore, kind of thing. There's like a functional nature to it, but you're also, in that sense, you're being challenged. Like you don't put yourself in that situation lightly. But what I mean is, it allows you to explore the world in a richer way. And it's a way for it to evolve as you grow through life. I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete in a pool competitively like that forever. Like, it's physically unsustainable. My body would fall apart. So at some point I had to be like, okay, I need to take a step back and refocus my energy where I put my attention. But it didn't mean I was going to leave, what I was doing with the water, so to speak.
When's the last time you were in the water, in the ocean?
Last night. Was gonna get in
Yeah.
this morning. We were gonna go surfing this morning. We'll get in the water today. Most every day, somehow, some way. And I think what that is for me is, with relation to the sport of swimming, is, and I think, particularly because I think a lot of swimmers are going to listen to this podcast, is we know a lot of people who, let's say, finish college or finish swimming, and they don't really like it for a while. It's a very overwhelming kind of activity. I think sport, when you do it young, you do it for a long time, very intensely, it's intense. And I know I've had a lot of friends who, when they were done with swimming or sport in general, they were like, I don't want to touch this for a while. And I think that's the wrong kind of, that's not what we should be shooting for. This needs to evolve, and you need to know how it can evolve and where it can evolve to. And I think that's part of the responsibility of the sport, of the people in the sport, of the patrons and the coaches and everything else. And there's a rich history of that within swimming, as there's a rich history of that within almost every sport, within cycling and everything else. Within cycling, you probably turn to the people who rode just to get up into the mountains and go for days and days and days and days. It was a way to travel and move, and it was a way to see the countryside and
At the perfect speed, 13 miles an hour. It's the best way to see anything.
Right. And there was like probably a functionality to it that made it very, I don't know, it made it pleasurable. And so it's important to keep that in sight. And one of the beautiful things about being able to swim well is you can go and explore. Most of this world is water, so there's lots to do. And so it's just kind of having that understanding, to juxtapose that. A lot of people I swam with on the national team who are afraid to get in the ocean. And I was like, what's wrong with you? And I understood that, though, in the sense of, but I also, what I thought was, this needs to change. There's a disconnect there. So
do you have concrete advice? I know you're so philosophical, for a person who's approaching the end of their swimming career. You love the water. I do too. You love the water. I'm not a swimmer, but I love the water. And so somebody's reaching the end of their college career or whatever, and you're saying, we gotta stay with it. So what's your concrete advice to that person?
Well, I think there's, whether it's in lakes or rivers or I smelled like chlorine for years after I was done with swimming, and a lot of people love that smell, and you keep doing it. And a lot of people still love to do that, and so everyone's got their own way of finding their little love within it. But that's a great question, and I think it's a matter of understanding that there's still lots to explore. Like, it doesn't have to stop when your competitive career stops. Youth sport should act as a launching pad with regards to how you're going to go and live your life through your building of character and your integrity, and how you compose yourself in stressful situations and things like that, but also in a way where you get to explore the world physically. And we're very physical people, and for experiencing those kinds of things, and there's ways for people like us to go and explore the world physically. It might mean you have to travel, it might mean you need to go somewhere to do that. But it's just to understand that exists, and that there are people doing that, I think is something to acknowledge, and that there's a rich history of that within the sport of swimming itself. Rich history. And I can attest to that. And I consider myself a part of that. And so like I'm proud to be part of that, as much as I am proud to have the accolades I think I have within the sport of swimming. And so I'd love to draw attention to that, because I believe that's a really rich part of what we have within our sport. And it's like if I can give an example, when you go into the International Swimming Hall of Fame, swimming and diving and all aquatic sports, water polo and synchronized swimming is in Fort Lauderdale, and I'm actually on the board of that Hall of Fame, and was always inspired by it when I was young, and for various reasons, but the history is deep. And there's this one little thing, and it's in the back. It's not so little, and it's hanging on the rafters, and it's not even out front. No one who walks through there would even really know what it is. And I just looked up and I'm like, wow, is that what I think it is? And it was this old wooden board shaped in like the 1930s. Someone had donated, I don't know, way back when. And anyway, what it was this. It was for me, it was a way of bridging a bunch of gaps of the way that I view the world of swimming, but that don't necessarily exist now. And so those lineages, or those connections, I guess, they do exist, and I grew up around those people, and try to remind my friends occasionally, or people I'm around, that exists, I guess. So,
we like to ask what made you successful, and I think you have just answered it in watching you swim. And I've watched many of your races many times, and my husband is a Southern Californian surfer from super young, California State lifeguard for 10 years. When he went through his lifeguard test, he said there were 18-foot waves, and the NCAA champion in the 1500 free was in his lifeguard class. And that guy washed out. He didn't make it through the waves.
Right.
And my husband did. And so when my husband, Mark, and I watched you swim, Mark would say, I just feel Aaron's surferness, his connection to the water. And so we just interviewed Michael Andrew.
Yeah.
Who has the same sacred connection to the ocean. And during the pandemic, Michael did not swim, he surfed.
Right.
And now, what he just did this past weekend? I think he posted 3 #1 US times going into the Olympic trials.
Right.
So I feel like this question, I just want you to frame, obviously, any way you want it. But if you're talking to Olympic hopefuls, everyone's looking for that one advantage. Can you kind of address what advice you would give to people going into Olympic trials right now that are a little scared, both on your pressure, the way you handle pressure, but also maybe connecting to the water, the Aaron Peirsol pre-Olympic trials advice?
Well, shoot, those, they could probably be melded, and that's an interesting question. I saw Michael Andrews actually out here on the island maybe about a month ago.
Yeah.
And that was fun, and we got to swim around and body surf for about an hour or so up on the North Shore, and I could tell he was taken by the ocean in that way, and so it was it was nice to see. See, when that happens to someone like a swimmer, particularly who's someone who's very good, it's humbling. And you can be like the best person in the world. And I've seen this with friends of mine who have been out in the water on certain days, and in the big water on certain days. And it's humbling for them because now the water's moving. And it's not just some still body of water. All of a sudden they realize there's another dynamic going on. And there's things that are going on that are really making them uncomfortable. They might be really good and comfortable in a pool, but all of a sudden they move one way and they don't move. They move another way and they don't move. And they don't understand that the water is much stronger than they are, and they have to learn how to work within it. And there's a nice lesson in humility in that, particularly for somebody who is such a good swimmer who is used to the pool. So it's understanding how water works and how water moves, and you don't really know it until you're in a moving body of water consistently. And particularly in dynamics which even stress your abilities. And you think you're a really good swimmer, and all of a sudden you're being thrown around by a lot of water, and you're going, wow, I'm not in control of this situation. You got to remind yourself how to relax and let it go. And then you realize you're playing, and there's a beauty in that. And so what the ocean, or what something like that, and maybe like nature in general, can teach you is that, you can learn how to work and play within it, and within its little rules. It's got its own rules, and you can't change that. And it'll hold you accountable if you need it. So I think too, for a lot of the athletes going into trials this summer, I think one of the nicest things to know going into such a stressful summer is one of the hardest things to do. And again, I think going back to what I felt like was one of the more important things in sport was to maintain a perspective. And what I mean by that, particularly when going into such a stressful summer, it's to understand that you can ask yourself a very simple question, and you might be surprised by the answer. But you say, like a swimmer or cyclist, like, why do you swim? Why do you cycle? And I've always been interested by the answers, but having a really good understanding and grasp of why you're putting yourself through all this is important. And checking in on that every once in a while is very important. It's really important to check in on that, particularly before you put yourself in a stressful place. So what I mean by that is, like, you ask yourself why you swim, and for a lot of, or cycle or whatever, and you ask a lot of athletes who have done this since they were young why they do it, and they a lot of the answers I remember getting would be something along the lines of, like, well, because I love to compete, or I love to win or go fast, or whatever it is. And but I'm less interested in those answers. And occasionally a kid would raise their hand and be like, well, it's all I've ever done. Like, thank you for being honest, or it's like, well, it's because I'm good at it. That's why I do it. Like, okay, good, good, honest answer, and because my parents threw me in it, like that kind of thing, right? And those are good, honest answers, right? Like, that's the kinds of things it's good to acknowledge that stuff, because then you can start telling yourself, then you can start actually taking ownership of your own little journey. And it's like, well, why am I putting myself through all of this? It's very stressful and very hard on the body, physically and mentally. So, it needs to be for something a bit deeper, a bit more visceral. So it needs to be for some kind of, I think it needs to be for some kind of spiritual thing. I don't know that it can really, I think if it's all technical, it's pretty superficial and shallow. I think it needs to be somewhat, I think you need to be getting something out of it. You need to be growing through this. as a person. So, I think it's important to check in with that. And that can be difficult. A lot of people might find that they simply aren't enjoying it, even if they're very, very good. But I think it's important to just really be honest about what it is, why it is you're doing what you're doing. And a lot of times it might be going back to when you were a kid. You just like to play and have fun, and not lose sight of that. And so the ocean it's a big part of that, for me. It's just you going out and you're playing, and you're playing seriously at times, which is great kind of play. There's an accountability within that. That is, you learn within that too. So, the short of it.
Yeah, it's a great answer.
Yeah,
Knowing your why.
I'm
Sure.
I'm blown away. It's gold. It's gold. I don't think the height of this podcast could get any higher than that. I feel like that has got to be the note to end on, because to me, Aaron, this has been everything I hoped it would be. I used to call Sergio Lopez Miro the Yoda of swimming, and I think I'm going to switch you to the Yoda of swimming, because this just really, that answer you just gave, I just hope people are listening, because it's phenomenal. We do ask one last question in case, and then we'll let you go get in the ocean. Was there anything that we didn't ask you that you would like to share with our listeners?
Oh, goodness. No, not off the top of my head, Kelly. Thank you for asking. But I would just, these are fun things to talk about. And they're things that there are reasons that I like to stay around the sport of swimming. And so I will be at trials this summer for a few days. And that'll be a lot of fun to kind of step back onto that deck. But I think if anything is just for people who are listening to read about your past and the history and know where it comes from. And there's an incredible richness in it. And there are people that lived 80, 100 years ago, who inspire me to this day as much as anything. And so I think that just to kind of understand the world that you're in, and you brought up this legacy of backstroke, which goes back 25 years. And for me, it goes back to this gentleman, Warren K. Aloha, actually. And he was in like the late teens, early 20s, and he won the backstroke twice, 100 backstroke twice, for what it's worth. It's an interesting stat. But you nearly have to go back 100 years, and he was a Hawaiian gentleman. And Hawaiians were very good at swimming, partly because they just spent their lives in the water. And there's something interesting about being on these islands, which I really appreciate, is that these people have a very deep understanding of what it is to exist by the water. And it's not very myopic, it's very broad. So in some ways, there are places around the world that I can go to where I feel like there are certain people that are kind of like my kin. And in that sense, they're kind of like our kin. I can go to like Australia and feel that, or Southern California and feel that. And there's just certain cultures that are by the water, and I love the mountains, and I just didn't grow up around them. So I guess my fate's been sealed to some degree. And so I would just say, if this is the sport that you're in, find whatever it is, explore that rich history that exists within it. I know within cycling, it goes back, well, I guess the first bicycle would probably have been made only 130, 40 years ago, right? So you would have had the rich history of just getting through the mountainsides. And I can't imagine anything more lovely than exploring something like the hill country by bicycle. So
the second only to body surfing on a beautiful day.
Sure. Sure, it may be, and there's all those kinds of things for people who climb, or for people who even play music or do art.
Right.
I
I love
think,
this. So Aaron,
yeah.
You're a mystic. You're a water mystic. I love the priest Yoda. I love the theology of
silly.
swimming.
I know, but again, I can't help but I try to acknowledge that I do feel like there's a spiritual component to spending this much time with something. And so I think if you are spending this much time with something, let's say within this avenue of sport, you better find the spiritual side in it. Doesn't necessarily mean it's anything but understanding that you're learning how to grow within it. That's it, and find some connection with it, and learning that the more you do it, the more you're going to love it, the more you'll be frustrated by it, and it's but there's a healthy way to go through it, and there's a healthy way to compete, and to understand that everyone that we're competing with is going after the same thing and deserves as much respect as anybody else, as much as ourselves. And so having that sense of sportsmanship and integrity is as important as any kind of accolade. And so what I would say to somebody who mentions my accolades is, there are a lot of people who may have done very well at what they've done, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're a good person. And so I think it's important to maintain a certain kind of character throughout something that you spend that much time in. And those are the things that I think are very important to perpetuate and to pass along within the sport. And so for as long as I'm around, I feel like I'll try to express those things. I've gotten less concerned with how fast kids go or how nice and pretty their strokes are. There are other things I'm interested in now. But I'll still go and watch, and I love watching and cheering on my team. So.
Well, I have to say, as journalists, you often set out to interview people, and like I said, we've interviewed many people, and even before the podcast, I had a career as doing a lot of journalism, and you set out in an interview hoping that you're going to distill that person into a segment that the audience will get to appreciate. And I have to say, Aaron, that this is exactly what I was hoping to get. I didn't know you. I watched you swim. My husband had a feeling about your water, what a waterman you are. And then, but to really hear this is it's exactly what I wanted. We didn't want to talk about, Facebook or who's going to win the Olympic 100 backstroke. We really wanted to get to know Aaron Peirsol and kind of what you're all about. And I couldn't be more thrilled with what you've given us today in this interview.
Thank you so much.
You're giving the platform, and so that's as much of anything. So my pleasure.
Well, thank you. We'll maybe someday you'll hit Florida again. And Maria's a huge body surfer. I love to surf. We can get out here, or maybe my husband will drag me out to Hawaii sometime.
Where are you ladies, by the way? Where are you?
Right now, I'm less than a mile from the ocean, up in Massachusetts near Plum Island.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, okay. But I spent some time in Florida, and near where Kelly is.
Yeah, okay. And we lived on the ocean for 15 years, direct ocean for my husband, Melbourne, Florida, which is Orlando's closest beaches. And we just moved off because my husband's taken up golf now. So but we love the ocean, of course. And Mark's a huge surfer, stand-up paddleboarder, Southern Californian. So
yeah, it doesn't. Yeah. You can't take that out of somebody.
No,
who grew up. It doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Aaron. All the best. Hope to see you maybe at trials. You never know. Yes. We might get out there.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. It's now time for the takeaways. Maria, you and I have heard the takeaways are the best part of the show.
That's right, Kelly, because the takeaways are curated information, which is what we give to our clients when we coach them.
If you would like to take your performance to the next level in health, life, or leadership, go to our website and schedule your free 30-minute consultation.
Yes, just click on our coaching page and book there. We're looking forward to bringing out the champion in you.
And now, the takeaways. Okay, Maria, the takeaways from our other, we've dubbed another Yoda of swimming, right? Another Yoda with Aaron Peirsol. Aaron Peirsol, legendary.
Yeah, I wanted to say
Olympic
priest.
backstroker.
Yoda's better, but I wanted to say he's a priest. He's a mystic. He's he's thought so
he called
deeply
himself
about
a wizard from the woods.
I
right?
like that. I like that. Yeah.
So I want to, if someone's going to just listen to the takeaways, the big takeaway was for anyone going into a pressure-filled situation. And if you're a swimmer going to Olympic trials or a big meet and the Olympics, so there's going to be a pressure-filled summer, we asked, what advice do you have? And this was my huge takeaway. He said, when you're in that pressure situation, ask yourself why you're there. And I just love that. And he gave a few examples that in his mind, in Aaron's mind, they were not as powerful as some others. Like certainly, because, I have the talent, or because I've worked hard, or because, obviously my parents wanted me to do it, or some other lesser reason. But for Aaron, his reason, his thought was that why needs to be something spiritual, something deep, something that's really going to motivate you. And, like we always say in coaching, it's the why beneath the why. You
Right.
might initially say, because I've worked so hard, or because I'm a great swimmer, or because I have a lot of talent, or because I'm a great cyclist. But his why was that spiritual connection to the water, his love of the water, of being in the element, of really respecting that oneness that he felt with the water. He's a waterman. He's an ocean man. So when he got in the pool, it was just like, that was a spiritual why for him.
Yeah. I loved the way he talked about his connection and his family's connection to the water. And because I could relate to it, even though I'm not a swimmer, I grew up, I've always been near the ocean. I've always body surfed. I'm not afraid of the ocean. I mean, I respect the ocean, but I really, really loved the way he talked about that. And I agree. I think the hard things, we've talked about this, the hard things I've done, the why has to be something that, you wouldn't stop for. When I was doing RAM, it was, of course, I was trying to save people's lives from brain cancer. That was my why. And, that was not so spiritual, but it was bigger than me. And so I think that is really important. Knowing the why is going to help. And the second thing, in terms of handling the pressure that he said that I loved, which was my takeaway, was just to remind yourself, there's a lot that you're not in control of, and, you can worry about those things. We talk about this a lot. Anxiety comes a lot from worrying about things that you have no control over. Your goggle bands might break, whatever, your suit might fall down. Who knows? Things can, and if you, so to remind yourself that those are things out of your control, and remind yourself of the preparation that you have done coming into it should reduce the pressure of that situation.
That's a great one to reduce pressure for anything, is that control what you can control. I mean, but one thing that applies to any part of life is stay in your own lane. Yeah. You can't control what, somebody next to you is doing. You can't. They may have swum the world record by 10 seconds and you may set the American record. So I love that as a pressure reliever, that you can't control everything and don't try to. So that
he said specifically, there's a lot that's out of our control.
There's a lot. That was the exact quote. There's a lot that's out of our control.
Like
so there were many gems in there, and
be sure to listen.
Like I said, it exceeded my expectations. So anyway, love you, Maria.
Love you
great,
too,
another great one in the books.
Yeah. I love you. I'll see you soon.
Alrighty, bye.
You've been listening to the Champions Mojo podcast with host Kelly Pallas and Maria Parker. Champions Mojo is produced by Cabra Media, and a new episode debuts every Tuesday. Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. Follow Champions Mojo on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Champions Mojo.